All right, so state first who you are,
Lee Brandt.
and you actually came all the way from Kansas City, right?
Yes.
So, was it like a 6-hour drive? 7?
7.
That's commitment. And this is actually your first time here, right?
Yep.
Yep. Okay. So, your talk is actually, I wouldn't say off the beaten path, but it is a little different than I think the other ones here. So, why don't you talk a little bit about what you're going to be doing in your session?
Well, I'm talking. My talk is called Kanban the Cache. Stolen ideas make a great process. It's basically kind of how we do things at Adventure Tech.
That's where you work.
Yeah,
Okay.
and how I've done things at the last couple of employers, and how we've kind of refined that process to kind of make it more lean, and to kind of get you from the board, the Kanban board, to actually writing code.
Okay, so stop for a second. What is a Kanban board? Because some of the stuff I'm like, I have no clue about what you're talking about.
Okay, Kanban board, if you're familiar with Scrum and the Scrum boards, is basically just sticky notes on a board in a bunch of lanes. You start by mapping your value stream, mapping how you do things now, and making a column for each one of the steps that a development piece goes through, from the time the customer asks for it to the time you deliver it to the customer.
Okay.
So you make a lane for each one of those things, and then you start limiting your work in progress in those lanes. One thing that tends to happen quite a bit is developers get overloaded, usually by their project managers pushing things to them.
I've never heard of that happening at all, ever.
So what you do is you limit your work in progress so that you try and get down to one piece flow, to where one piece of your system is flowing through the system as fast as it can possibly flow, and there's another piece right behind it. So if you think of it like a hose rather than a bucket. So Scrum or regular waterfall development is like a bucket, grabbing a whole bucket and trying to move it all the way over here and dump it, where a hose is like getting this much water from here to there with another piece that size right behind it, and just keeps going. So Kanban is all about that, and it's all about making the process visible to project managers so they can see where there's bottlenecks, where there's problems in their current system, and allowing them to tweak their system and get visibility to see if what they're doing is helping.
So, how long have you been using, Kanban, or the idea is very similar
Well, I
to
started with Scrum back in 2007,
Okay.
And we had some success with Scrum, but one of the things that we found is that we always ended up kind of at the end of a sprint pushing to get everything that we committed to get done at the end of the sprint. So it was like little mini death march projects all the way through the system. And that's not Scrum's fault, that's our fault for not doing Scrum correctly, because we should have just gotten done what we got done and use that as our velocity to make our commitments going forward. But what tends to happen is that project managers tend to look poorly on that and go, well, why didn't you meet your commitments?
You failed, is basically, yeah.
So one of the things we started looking at is, what if we got rid of the sprints and just delivered one piece at a time? And once we started looking at modifying Scrum for doing one piece at a time, we started getting all this literature on Lean and Kanban for software. David Anderson, mostly. He's kind of the father of it at Microsoft and Corpus. And he basically transferred the Toyota production system, which is the first Kanban system, to software.
Okay.
So we took that, and we took Arlo Belshie's naked planning and made that our process. And it turned out to work out really well from moving from Scrum to getting rid of those iterations and changing our process to have features, then stories, then scenarios. Once you get down to the scenarios, you can make those executable, and you're doing BDD at that point. So the hardest part for us was getting from stories on the board to tests in our code. And that one little step of breaking it down from features to stories to scenarios got us there.
Okay, cool. All right, thanks, Lee. Appreciate it.
No problem.